To be covered in this lesson are flower, a fascinating organ of angiosperms, pre-fertilization, structures and events, double fertilization, post-fertilization, structures and events, apomixis and polyembryony. So in our previous lesson, we talked about the basics of sexual reproduction in different organisms. Not only sexual reproduction, we spoke about reproduction as a whole, where we discussed about sexual mode of reproduction as well as asexual mode. Now in this lesson, we are going to talk about the sexual reproduction in case of plants. Now, why do we need reproduction? I don't think I need to repeat that, because we want to have more and more plants. That is why plants need to reproduce. That is one thing. The second thing is that a particular type of plant should not be lost. For example, each species of a plant should be able to retain itself over years together. And in order to retain, they need to reproduce. So that is the purpose of reproduction in plants. Now the question is, why are we exclusively studying the sexual reproduction? That's because there are a lot of advantages of sexual reproduction over asexual reproduction. For example, sexual reproduction has the ability to bring in variations, and these variations are for good. So here we will talk about the details of sexual reproduction, how sexual reproduction actually takes place in a plant. So that is our agenda here, because we already discussed in our previous lesson what is sexual reproduction, why is it better than asexual reproduction and stuffs like that. So here we will only focus on understanding how the process of sexual reproduction takes place in a plant. So in order to understand the process of sexual reproduction, we have to first understand the reproductive organ of a plant. And which is the reproductive organ of the plant? Yes, it is the flower, the most attractive part of a plant. I'm very sure that many of you would have got a variety of flowering plants in your garden, so that they actually give you nice fragrance, they actually give you a nice visual thing, that is all yellow, green, bright colored flowers everywhere. So it looks very nice. So it is nice not only look wise but function wise also. Flower plays one of the most important role in a plant. So flower is the reproductive organ of the flowering plant. So flower is nothing but it is a modified shoot. So basically the shoot modifies itself and form a structure like flower. Now before we understand how the process of sexual reproduction takes place, now since flower is the main organ which is responsible for sexual reproduction, it is very important to understand the structure of the flower. What is the flower made up of? Now when you ask about a flower to somebody who doesn't know stuffs in detail, so they will say that okay, flowers look so very different in different plants. Some of them are yellow, some of them are red, some are orange, some are very big in size while others are very small in size. So you actually get to see that flowers come in a lot of varieties, a lot of shapes, a lot of sizes, a lot of colors. So here we will talk about the flower in general, that what are the basic parts of the flower which are common to all types of flower. So let us try to understand the structure of a flower. So we have just taken a rough diagram of a flower, and this holds true for most of the flowers. Like even though they look different, but their internal structure is almost the same. So let us quickly see what are the different parts of the flower called. So these colored wings of the flower, I can say, because they are the most attractive part in a flower. So these colored parts of the flower are nothing but the petals. They are called petals. They can be yellow, red, green, blue, anything. So they are all brightly colored. Sometimes they are white as well. Just below the petals, you would have seen that there are small green leaf-like structures which actually forms the base of the petals. I mean, when the flower is a bud, so a bud turns into a flower, right? So when it is a bud, you would have often seen that the flower is hidden inside by some green leaf-like structure, which later, I mean, once the flower is formed, they are present at the base of the flower. So these green colored structures are called sepals. this slender tube-like structure which holds the entire flower together. So this stalk, this is known as the stalk. So this is the stalk of the flower. What about this swollen part which you see here? So you see the stalk becomes a little swollen here. And what is this swollen part called? This is known as thalamus. Now the most interesting part. So these are something which are visible from outside. But if you look deep inside, you will get to see that there are some structures which are present inside the flower as well. So now just at the center of the flower, you actually see a structure like this, a long tube-like structure which has got a swollen base, something like this. So this entire structure forms the female reproductive organ of the flower, and this is known as carpel. So carpel, or it is also known as pistil. So you can use these names interchangeably. So this is the carpel. Now again, this carpel has different parts in it. As you can see, the structure looks quite big and complex. So we will talk about the carpel or the pistil. And this carpel is the female reproductive part of the flower. Now what about these parts? Now these structures which you see, these are the stamen. So they are called stamen, and they form the male reproductive part of the flower. So broadly, these are the important parts of a flower. So now we will look at the function of each of these parts quickly. So let us have a quick detailed explanation of these parts. So the first is the stalk, which I said, this one is the stalk here. So this is the stalk, and what is its purpose? It holds the flower. I mean, you need something to hold the entire flower. So it just acts as that base tube-like structure. Thalamus, it is the swollen upper portion of the stalk. So now due to the presence of the swollen portion, it becomes easier for the entire flower to sit over the thalamus. Petals, the colored parts of a flower, the main purpose of the petals is to attract insects. Now why do plants or why do flowers want to attract insects? So we will see this, or we will discuss this when we talk about pollination. Now many of you would have known what is pollination, because this was there in your previous class as well, where I have already explained pollination, but yet again we'll cover this again here. So the insects play a very important role in the process of sexual reproduction in a plant, and that is why it is very important for the flowers to attract insects. So how do they attract insects? There are two things, or there are two weapons which they use in order to attract insects. One is their attractive color, which makes the insects to come near them. The other is their fragrance, the beautiful smell, or sometimes even the foul smell, that also attract many of the insects. The sepals, as I said, this green colored structures, these are the sepals, and what do? They ensure protection. Now they are like, they look quite lean and soft leaf-like structures. So what sort of protection do they give? They actually ensure protection of the bud. So even before the flower is actually there, so the bud needs to be protected, because the bud is very much delicate. So if you look at a bud, you will actually see that the entire bud is almost covered with this sepals. Now, but when it actually blooms, or when the flower is formed, these sepals being quite small, they tend to be present only at the bottom. So that doesn't mean that they do not serve a purpose. They have a very important purpose. Stamens, that is the male reproductive organ. As I said, these are the stamens, and these what is the purpose of the male reproductive organ? So the male reproductive organ will produce the male gametes, that is the male sex cells, because whenever you talk about sexual reproduction, you need a male gamete and a female gamete, right? So somebody has to produce the male gamete. So male gamete will be produced by the male reproductive organ, that is the stamen. So these parts are going to produce the stamens, are going to produce the male gametes. And what are the male gametes? Male gametes are pollen grains. Now we will discuss about what is pollen grain, how is it formed, etc., etc. We'll do that. But for now, you just know that these parts are the stamens and they produce the male gametes, and the male gametes are contained in the pollen grains. So pollen grain actually contain the male gametes. Next is the carpel. As I said, this central portion, and it is the female reproductive organ, so it produces the female gamete, and the female gamete is the ovum or the egg cell, whatever you call it. So this egg cell is the female gamete. So now in this lesson we have to see how the pollen grains are formed, that is how male gametes are produced, how female gametes are produced, and how they both fuse together, what happens when they both fuse together, and how a new plant is formed by the fusion of male and female gametes.